have my 5 people over with.
Malia?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, my speech is about the first African American author, Phillis Wheatley. Although she was an enslaved person, Phillis Wheatley Peters was one of the best-known poets in the pre-19th century America. Educated and enslaved in the household of prominent Boston commercialist John Wheatley, lionized in New England and England. With presses in both places publishing her poems and paraded before the new republic's political leadership in the old empire's autocracy, Wheatley was the abolitionist illustrative testimony that blacks could be both artistic and intellectual. Her name was a household word among literate colonists, and her achievements a catalyst for the fledgling anti-enslavement movement. Wheatley was seized from Gambia, West Africa, when she was about 7 years old. She was transported to the Boston docks with a shipment of refugee slaves who became of age or physical frailty were unsuited for rigorous labor in the West Indian and Southern colonies for the first ports of call after the Atlantic crossing. In the month of August 1761, in one of a domestic, Susanna Wheatley, wife of prominent Boston tailor John Wheatley, purchased a slender, frail female child for a trifle. Because the captain of the slave ship believed that the waif was terminally ill, he wanted to gain at least a small profit before she died. A Wheatley relative later reported that the family surmised the girl, who was of slender frame and evidently suffering from a change of climate, nearly naked with no other covering than a quantity of a dirty carpet around her, to be about 7 years old from the circumstances of shedding her front teeth. After discovering the girl's amazing literary skills, the Wheatleys, including their son Nathaniel and their daughter Mary, did not entirely excuse Wheatley from her domestic duties, but taught her to read and write. Soon she was immersed in the Bible, astronomy, geography, history, and British literature. Wheatley indicated that despite this exposure, rich and unusual for an American slave, her spirit yearned for the intellectual challenge of a more academic atmosphere. Although scholars have generally believed that she published her first poem that was revealed in 1969, that a 13-year-old Wheatley, after hearing a miraculous saga of survival at sea, wrote on Marissa's Hussy and Coffin, it's hard to pronounce, a poem which was published on the 21st of December in 1767 in the Newport of Rhode Island Mercury. But it was Whitefield Elegy that brought Wheatley national renown. Published as a broadside in the pamphlet in Boston, Newport, and Philadelphia, the poem was published with Ebenezer Pemberton's funeral sermon for the Whitefield, London in 1771, bringing her international acclaim. By the time she was 18, Wheatley had gathered a collection of 28 poems for which she, with the help of Miss Wheatley, ran advertisements for subscribers in Boston newspapers in February of 1772. When the colonists were apparently unwilling to support the literature by an African, the Wheatleys, turned into frustration to the London for a publisher. Wheatley had forwarded the Whitefield poem of Selina Hastings, Countess of Huntingdon, to whom Whitefield had been a chaplain. A Wheatley supporter of everglacial and abolitionist causes, the Countess instructed bookseller Archibald Bell to begin correspondence with Wheatley in preparation for the book. Wheatley, suffering from a chronic asthma condition, was accompanied by Nathaniel and left for London on May 8th of 1771. The now celebrated poets was welcomed by several dignitaries, abolitionists, and pardoned the Earl of Dartmouth. While Wheatley was recrossing the Atlantic to reach Miss Wheatley, who at the summer's end had become seriously ill, Bell was circulating the first edition of Poems on Various Subjects, which is one of her most famous books about various different subjects and various different poems. Poems of Various Subjects revealed that Wheatley's favorite Wheatley's favorite poetic form was a couplet. Both in iambic pentameter and heroic, more than 1/3 of her canon is imposed on elegies and poems on the deaths of noted persons, friends, or even strangers whose loved ones employed the poet. The poems that best demonstrate her abilities are most often questioned by the detractors are those that employ classical themes as well as techniques. She not only translates Ovid, but adds her own beautiful lines to extend a dramatic imaginary and she transforms her Jorge's ode into a celebration of Christ.
Yes.
In addition to classical and neoclassical techniques, Wheatley applied biblical symbolism to evangelize and comment on slavery. For instance, on being brought from Africa to America, the best-known Wheatley poem chides from the Great Awakening audience to remember that Africans must be included in the Christian stream. The remainder of Wheatley's themes can be classified as celebrations of America. She was the first to applaud this nation as glorious as Columbia, and that in a letter to no less than the first president of the United States, George Washington, with whom she had corresponded and whom she was later privileged to meet. Her love of Virgin America was, as her religious fervor is further suggested by the names of those colonial leaders who signed the attestation that appeared in some copies of poems on various subjects. To authenticate her support and work, Thomas Hutchinson, the governor of Massachusetts, another fervent Wheatley supported was by Dr. Benjamin Rush, one of those signers who wrote the Declaration of Independence. Yet, throughout these lean years, Wheatley Peters, now called Wheatley Peters, who later got married, continued to write and publish her poems to maintain on a much more limited scale. Her international correspondence. She also felt that despite the poor economy, her American audience, and certainly her evangelical friends, would support a second volume of poetry. Between October and December of 1779, with the partial motive of raising funds for her family, she ran 6 advertisements soliciting subscribers for 300 pages in Octavia, a volume dedicated to Benjamin Franklin. This would include 33 poems and 13 letters. As with poems of various subjects, however, the American populace would not support one of its most noted poems. During the year of her death, 1784, she was able to publish under Phyllis Peters a masterful 64-line poem in a pamphlet entitled Liberty and Peace, which hailed America as Columbia, various over Britannia law. Proud of her nation's intense struggle for freedom that, to her, bespoke the eternal spiritual greatness, Wheatley Peters ended the poem with a triumphant ring. So now I'm going to read one of her poems. Britannia owns her independence ring, Hibernia, Scotia, and realms of Spain, and great Germania's ample coast admires the general spirit that Columbia fires. Auspicious heaven shall fill with the fame's gales, where Columbia spreads her swelling sails. To every realm shall peace her claims display, and heavenly freedom spread her gold ray. And that's the end.
That was good.
Woo!
Yay!
Beautiful.
Bye, guys.